Raymond, that's you.
No, say Raymond.
I'm Raymond. You're watching RPadTV, and I am joined today by two excellent people. On the top left is Mac Marshall, not your top left, you're up there, from Turtle Beach, and video game journalist extraordinaire Paul Semel. How are you guys doing today?
I'm
Wonderful
good.
and sad.
Yes. Well, this probably will be a long episode, so I am not going to give you guys time to give updates on your projects, but I will throw to your links. They are in the Facebook and YouTube descriptions if you want to check out the products that Mac is working on and check out Paul's latest excellent articles. His website is also there in his Chiron, conveniently for you. So today we're going to talk about Andor, and this will probably be a long and nerdy and maybe somewhat divisive chat. Guys, if you want to learn more about Andor after this, please check out our friend Matthew Freeman's Substack, Octobaby. He is a former video game journalist and my favorite playwright. He does articles on all things Star Wars. It's an excellent read, so go check that out. So let us kick things off with our usual bite-sized reviews. Mac, why don't you give me your bite-sized review of Andor Season 2?
I would like season 3.
That's fair. Paul, what do you have?
While I liked the second season of Andor, I didn't love it until the end.
Fair enough. I went with, that's not me. Andor is the best live-action series or movie Disney has released since it acquired Lucasfilm. As a Rebels nerd, there were moments in Ahsoka that were more meaningful to me, but objectively, Andor's combination of stellar writing, acting, and set design are streets ahead. And that is a phrase that everyone should be using because it is a cool phrase. Mac, what was your favorite part of Andor Season 2?
Oh man, that's such a tough part. I think my favorite part, just on the whole, was finally getting to see more of K2 just on the rampage that I always seem to be the one looking to find in our shows. I just, it's so well voiced by Alan Tudyk, right?
Yes.
That it just plays so perfectly against like how hyper violent he is as a character, even though he's a sweetheart, like it was really fun to finally kind of see that. And I think the biggest thing that I liked about just the show in general, and I'm going to kind of quote another review that I saw here, but like it makes you look at and care about like the original Star Wars movies with so much more appreciation for where they were at, where Luke joined into the fray of everything happening. I just think that was such a neat piece of the puzzle that I didn't know was missing, that I really enjoyed seeing.
Excellent. And you, Paul, what was your favorite aspect of Andor Season 2?
For me, again, it like with Mac, it was when K2 showed up, because that to me was what made part of what made those last two episodes really, really good and
the movie
much better.
And Rogue One as well.
Yeah.
Like you watched Rogue One, once you saw K2SO in the first scene, every scene after that, you're waiting to see where he shows back up and does more.
Yeah. I mean, when he's like just sort of casually walking along and just like whacks a guy and flies off,
the guy asks, "Are you with us?" No.
I love that. I love that. Just and just again the way it's voiced, and then I also just love and spoiler alert, we're jumping ahead here. But when he grabs the little weakling commander guy and just uses him as a human meat shield as he's walking up on the other,
oh yeah,
I loved every. Like he kicks a guy full blown superhero kick through the elevator. I mean every scene in that last episode was everything I wanted. It's the angry Chewbacca that you want to see finally.
And that was Hirt from the ISB, who is not actually a military officer. He is kind of like a I don't know, mid-level manager in the
Yeah.
ISP who becomes a meat shield. That was
Yeah.
hilarious.
That was great, and he was such just like a frail little like he just like screamed when he grabbed him. It was fantastic.
Okay, so my point is going to be a little longer than I usually talk. So please excuse me.
All right.
My favorite part about Andor season 2 is how it redefines and reframes what we saw in Rogue One and also the original Star Wars trilogy. I'm going to use an Eddie Izzard bit to explain what I mean, but Eddie Izzard does this bit about Pol Pot and mass murderers. If we hear, one guy gets murdered, we know that's horrible, and we understand that. Same if we hear like 5 people were murdered by a shooter, we understand how horrible that is. But eventually there's a certain number where you can't really process it because it's just too much, and you
go
can't.
numb.
Yeah, you can't envision it. So in A New Hope, we know that the Empire is evil. We see them blow up Alderaan, but blowing up a planet, we know that's terrible and heinous, but it's not something we can really process, especially because there's only one planet of life that we know of. So it's not something that us as a species can really understand. What I love about Andor is how it showed what the Empire, how vile they were up close and personal.
Absolutely.
We see them exploiting farmers on Mina Rao. We see them displace the Donnies in Aldhani in season 1, and then of course the Gore. We saw the Gorman massacre, and not only that, we got to know these places and these cultures, especially on Gorman, where we see it's like a French
resistance.
Like space planet France is what I keep calling it. But we see their language. We see that their culture, is based around the textile and fashion, and we get to know these people. So we see what the Empire is doing in terms of exploiting small farmers, exploiting, getting rid of one city full of people, and that's something we can identify with more. So it makes the evil of the Empire more pronounced, but it also gives you a better idea of why the rebellion is fighting it and what they were fighting for. So I love how it reframed that. I thought that was incredible. So next I want to talk about the structure of Andor. This was originally supposed to be a 5-season series, but somewhere in the middle of making season 1, the showrunner, Tony Gilroy, was like, yeah, I don't want to be doing this for 15 years. And he also thought that Diego Luna would be a little old towards the end. I think he's 45 now. So, when they finish season 5, he would probably be in his early 50s. So instead of 5 seasons, he wrapped it up in season 2, giving us 4 3-season arcs. So basically you had like mini trilogies, or as I call them, mini triads, because I'm learning how to butcher Jimi Hendrix right now. So triads are all in my head. Paul, what did you think of this format as a viewer, but also as a critic of this series?
Well, first I thought it was interesting, and there was a part of me that kind of wished they had done it in the first season. Like I wish like the first season had been, say, 2-3 piece episodes. Like I wish there was a consistency there, because I'm a fan of consistency. I can't imagine what he would have done with 5 seasons though, because like as it is, I think this was too long, and there's places where I felt it was sort of bloated. Somebody said if you watch Rogue One after Andor, like it moves really, really quickly, and that like the first 10 minutes of Rogue One would have been an entire episode of Andor. And that was one of the things I had like a problem with. It was some of the things that they spent way too much time on, like why they spent like so much time talking about Cyril's mom. Like,
that's like my biggest gripe against the series. It's like,
and there's something else I'll get into later. So I can't imagine 5 seasons being good. But as it was, I think the 3-season arc, it worked. I kind of wonder what would have happened if instead of making it 3 episodes, if they had made it 3 movies.
Right. Well, Tony Gilroy says he thinks of each of these trilogies as their own movie.
Right.
So
kind of where I was
going to see that. Yeah. So continue, Mac. What do you think of this format?
I loved it. I thought, to me, when you go back and just think of Star Wars, you think of things in series of 3, right? Like the first, the 4, 5, 6, and then they did the other ones after that, and then they did another set of 3. And so I feel like it's almost like paying homage to like that and delivering like another like set of 3 for each year leading up to the Battle of Yavin. I thought that was so neat and an original way to deliver a narrative that kind of bridged the gap from where we were when we left off with the end of Rogue One, right? Or even the beginning of Rogue One, and just how we got there from, even from season 1 of Andor, right? I think season 2 had a lot of legs to it. And I don't feel like any of those, like, I feel like all 3 episodes in each arc were long enough. I didn't feel like I got shorted, like when it turned, like a lot of the times when you're watching like an Ahsoka or something like that, like they're so short and it turns off and you're like,
yeah,
I got enough.
Yeah.
Right? And I didn't get any of that feeling here. I felt like every episode was long enough and gave me enough and ended on enough of a cliffhanger for me to like just click next and just because keep watching them. So I thought it was great. It served its purpose well doing it that way.
Yeah, I loved it as a storytelling format because the 3rd episode was almost like we were getting a finale every week. But also as a viewer, it was ideal because the way that most of these go, it's either weekly or it's dumped all at once. And weekly with streaming so popular, I don't think it works anymore. It's kind of annoying to have to wait another week. Like we're still in the TV days. I thought about Cobra Kai, which Netflix split up into 3 parts in the final season, but they released it a couple of months apart. And it wasn't necessarily intentional. There weren't like natural splits.
I wouldn't have been mentally okay if they spaced it out. Like, and left you hanging. Right?
I hated how Cobra Kai was released. So I thought that I like this better because if it's all at once, I prefer having it all at once compared to weekly. But I will also ruin my next 2 days because of a lack of sleep. I will literally watch the whole thing right when it comes out, even if it's during the week.
And that's what I watched, the day they were available, and then I slept on it, and then the next day I watched them all again, and just get like a better picture of things. And by the way, Paul, like I totally agree with you as well. Like I think there were sections of pacing that could have been better, right? Like, again, why did we spend so much time on the relationship between Cyril and his mom? I don't know. Maybe that is like some weird way for Tony Gilroy to explain, does he have a weird relationship with his own mother? Like, where is that all coming from? Why did it matter?
I didn't really need to know that there were overprotective Jewish mothers in the Empire.
Yeah, could have done without it. I think there were certainly like other elements that were similar in pacing like that, where you're just like, okay, let's get to the let's get to more K2SO being in the show, even because he was only in the last 2 episodes, which that was like,
well, that was intentional. Tony Gilroy spoke about this. Part of it was the practicality of it, because these are essentially spies, and spies can't always be walking around with a 7-foot robot. So, and part of it was expense, because that it's expensive to do all the CG and all that.
Well, either I mean, like to me, not perfect, but certainly well done. I want more, and I would watch more. Like if Ahsoka took the same approach and tried to introduce the pacing of episodes in a similar manner, I wouldn't be upset by that. I really liked it.
Mac and I were talking before we went live about how we wish there was a 3rd season, and how we almost wish that there, instead of 3 episode arcs, there were 4, because there were some details. Like I would love to know what Cinta was up to when she was separated from Vel, and how she got hurt. Like what happened to her.
That's going to be some kind of Tales from whatever episode.
Tales of Luthen's operatives. I mean, there were some points, like Paul, I remember we were talking, you felt the wedding was too long.
Wedding had the best music, though.
I know you love that scene. The Niamos.
I have that full song now, by the way. It's on Spotify. Many different versions are available.
Do you scream Niamos when they do that?
Yeah, just take that's my tattoo says so.
But it almost reminded me. I agree that it was long, but some weddings are like that. The longest weddings I've been to were South Asian weddings where the couple was Hindu,
And they rode in on an elephant, and there was that part of the ceremony. Because I've
well,
seen
I only went for one the last day, and that was 6 hours of.
oh man,
And it was a 5-day thing. I'm like, Jesus. Well, not Jesus. They were Hindu. So, and I don't know, like a 5-day wedding that's like 8 hours a day. Out of non-Western weddings, I've been to Chinese wedding banquets the most, and those can be like pretty long.
I've been to like a traditional Chinese wedding in like downtown Chinatown, and dragon dancing in the street, like all sorts of fireworks. It was amazing.
How long was it? It was like
it was an all night event, like I think all afternoon, all night, and like old ladies who were like 99 years old singing show tunes, karaoke up on stage. Like it was amazing.
They took you downtown to Chinatown.
Yes.
Sorry, I had to say that. So let's talk about our favorite episodes. There's a lot to choose from. Well, for me and Mac, I get the feeling Paul only likes a handful. But Mac, what was your favorite episode?
I think probably one of the last two. I think, like I said, when you finally got to see K2 go into action, like that for me was like the closure I needed. It wasn't enough, but it was also just barely enough, right? So I felt like that got me to where I was like, okay, they've delivered on that promise of whatever the series was going to kind of bring on that front. So yeah, I think this last episode was my favorite. It ended in a way that gave you hope.
Yes.
And that was, again, the whole kind of thing in the show. It's like rebellions are built on hope.
Yes. Especially when a bellhop tells you that. I love that it came from just like random bellhop guy too. And
no, that was like they said that like much earlier in the series.
Did they?
Oh yeah.
I don't remember that.
Yeah, it's somewhere.
I don't think anybody said it
to Cassian. So is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I don't think anybody had said it to Cassian though.
Somebody that phrase has been used previously either in the show or in I Rogue One somewhere.
No, it's used twice.
Well, it's in Rogue One. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Cassian tells it to Jin.
Her whole like motivational speech is essentially rebellions are built on hope.
Right, but if we're going chronologically, Cassian first heard it from the bellhop.
Yeah.
Paul,
okay.
Favorite episode?
The second to last, because it was the most entertaining. Especially the K2 SO, murder spree. It had the best energy of all of them, and he was just funny and things actually happened. And I also, my least favorite was the one before it, so it made the second one even better for me.
That was about Clea and Luthen and their history.
Okay, I do think in the latest three that was my least favorite of the latest three.
Yeah,
but also I found it super interesting too. Like they finally gave you, like, who the fuck is Luthen? Like, where did he come from? How does he have all his money? But like, so did they set him up as he was a stormtrooper? Is that what that?
No,
was he part of like the garrison that was holding down the village that was being attacked or something?
The way I saw it is that he was a conscript. He was wearing the same uniform that they used in the Solo movie, where Han was inscripted into the Empire.
Yeah. Okay.
And obviously he did not want to be there and was not cool with what he was doing. And then he finds Clea in the cupboard. Question about that episode: when they do the bombing on that lush planet, did that look like Naboo to you? Because I thought it might have been Naboo. There's water. There's a lot of green.
I mean, it wasn't so identifiable that it popped out to me.
Right. So my favorite episode.
I think if it was going to be Naboo, they would have made it more obvious that
they
would
have made a thing about it.
Well, no. I mean, there's so much subtlety throughout the series that it wouldn't surprise. Like they didn't want to name drop it, and that was also another intentional choice. Like so many of these studios are given instructions to be ham-fisted, either because the audience is stupid or the audience is watching it while also looking at their phone, which I am guilty of doing a lot too. But Tony Gilroy's like, no, fuck you. And then Kathleen Kennedy backed them up on that. So my favorite episode, I'm going with episode 9, Welcome to the Republic, which is when Mon Mothma makes her big speech.
Oh, right. When he gets her out of there.
And gets her out of there. There's also a small scene that I love where the security guard for the Senate, Pono, he's trying to open the door for the broadcast, but then the 2 tech engineers like, we just fixed it and it's locked. And it's like, this hasn't been closed in years. And it reminded me of Nemec's manifesto of how there are small acts of insurrection happening all the time.
Oh yeah.
And the rescue scene too. I loved Mon Mothma's reaction when Cassian shot her driver, and she was just like, she just was getting coming to reality.
And it was just like, she's like, holy shit.
Yeah. I mean, because she's operating in the rebellion on a high level, so she doesn't see the
she's not in the shit.
dirtiness. Yes. And I loved her coming to that realization. And the building they used looked phenomenal. That's the City of Arts and Sciences in Valencia, Spain. And it looks like a futuristic, awesome building, but it's actually in Spain. They, of course, did some background images. Yeah. I thought the sets were amazing, but
yeah, they did a really good job making you believe that they were in, because in the previously, like our whole perception of Coruscant was just from above, right? Like you never really got to see a ground level.
And you did in the cartoon.
You do in the prequels. Because there's that whole chase scene, and they go into the bar, and there's the
bar, but that's like,
you know,
like slummy, like they're in the not great areas of downtown Coruscant.
Oh yeah. You were.
They showed that
touristy parts
in the last season of Clone Wars, where Ahsoka was already out of the Jedi Order, and she was hanging out with these junkers in the seedy parts of Coruscant. Now let's talk monologues. Luthen had the incredible monologue from season 1 that most people thought was incredible. There are a few in season 2. Yes. It's like, my favorite bit of that is like, I'm condemned to use the weapons of my enemy against them, and just so powerful. Here there are a few monologues, maybe not as powerful as Luthen's, but also quite good. Paul, did you have one that stood out for you?
Not really. I mean, Mon Mothma addressing the Senate was cool because it was sort of not necessarily. I mean, what she said was cool and how she said it was cool, but more the significance of it being kind of the rebellion sort of going like, hey, we're here and we're going to stop you. And this is the beginning of it. Even though she never said, I'm part of the rebellion and blah, blah, blah. Like, it was kind of like the first time someone stood up and said, like,
yeah,
there's a lot that's wrong here and we can't stand for it. And so for the significance of that speech, that's the one that stands out for me.
Yeah, I like that speech as well. I will say that while it's not like a monologue, I guess, but Bail Organa, his just like one-to-one conversation with Cassian kind of at the end.
Oh yeah.
I thought that was I thought he played that character very well. And
I love the intro to that scene where K2 is like, the man you don't like is here.
Yes.
I thought that was funny. For me, there are two. I had a hard time deciding. I really liked when Vel was yelling at Sam after Cinta died, and she just totally goes off.
She crushed him, and you have to carry this with you forever.
Yeah, and you suck. But I'm gonna go with Saw Gerrera when he's huffing on the Rhydonium and talking to Willman and be like, you're here with me, you're not with Luthen. And it just explains a lot about that character, like why he's insane, why he has the breathing mask in Rogue One.
Right.
And You know it if was his sister in Clone Wars or Rebels? I think it was Clone Wars, Paul. Am I right?
Clone Wars is where he was first introduced, and I think that's where
Right.
the sister came into it.
And she dies in that. He comes back again in Rebels, but yeah, just giving him a drug problem. That I'm like, oh, that's why he's like such a paranoid
He's on the
weirdo in
sauce
Rogue
all the
One.
time.
Yeah, like that explains it. And then I'm like, now I want to go to the gas station. Like, is this cool? Now, I was talking about small details before, and there are so many of them. Mac, any stood out to you, or any that you caught in a second viewing, maybe?
Like small details. I mean,
Yeah.
one I just thought of right now is like how much we all like this particular series, and there isn't a single lightsaber anywhere.
Yeah, that's why. I mean, this is almost the anti-Star Wars. There's no laser swords or space wizards or giant space battles with dozens of ships, which is very interesting.
I can't think of like any little things that I was like, oh, like that I caught or saw. I just was enthralled with all of it. Like, it is probably one of my favorite TV shows of all time.
Paul, any small details that you remember or stood out for you?
Honestly, the one thing that I kept looking for and never saw, and was disappointed not to see, was we never saw Hera on Yavin.
Right.
And we know she's there because there's a line in Rogue One where you hear like a PA system, and it's like General Syndulla to the, I don't know what it is.
Your dry cleaning is ready, General Syndulla.
Yeah.
The white zone is
Yeah, the white, yeah. And like Chopper's,
jam.
yeah. Yeah, and if you look, like, you see the ghost and like Chopper's there. Like I kind of wanted that to happen. I don't need like a big scene of her being like, "Hi, I'm General Syndulla. You might know me from now."
Yes.
Yeah, but like I did want to just sort of see her, like, just kind of walk by and be like, "Hey,"
background, or like, yeah, like look like a boss in the background or something.
yeah, or like turn up in like a scene where like a bunch of people are talking and she's like, just standing there or whatever.
The one little detail that I did like, I'm just thinking through scenes that you're talking about now too, is I liked how every time they showed the rebel base on Yavin, right? Like that it wasn't like just a bunch of set. It's like they're actively fixing or building ships in the background the entire time. Like, it's like they're working around the clock to have the fleet that you're going to go see take on the Death Star very shortly.
And it's such a contrast to when we see Yavin in the first episodes, and these assholes are settling disputes with rock, paper, scissors.
Yes.
Carlos says, Paul wanted to see Chopper rescue Andor instead of K2. He probably wouldn't have done it. Like, Chopper would have like killed everyone in the building, and then.
Well, so did he too.
Well, he didn't kill like the residents in the building.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
Chopper would have blown up the building to get the job done.
So I will give two answers for small details. The first is when they went to the safe house, they used a knock that was like bop, bop, bop,
1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4.
And that was what they used in Ferrix in season 1 when they were doing that. So to illustrate that, I brought an accessory, and one way the series could have been better is with more cowbell. But yeah, when they knocked on the door in the safe house, it was always.
Mm-hmm.
The second thing is the gun that was at the beginning and end. So when we first meet Cyril Karn in episode 1, Cassian messes him up and takes his gun. And that gun is with him when he goes to space planet Barcelona, which we know is Niamos. That's in his stash up there. It's with him in the Aldani heist too, because you remember when the Thing inspects all his shit on Vel's command. So that's how Vel knows that gun. When Cassian and Melshi get out of Narkina 5 and go back to space planet Barcelona, he gives that gun to Melshi when Melshi joins the Resistance.
That's what I'm saying. Like, I didn't understand the significance of Vel going like, who belongs to this?
Yeah. So I did
not understand that at all.
Right. So she knows that gun from having the Thing inspect it in I keep forgetting the Thing's real name and also his character name. I always call him like Evan Burt Baccarat, but I know that's not
Evan Moss Evan Back Moss or something. Like.
Evan Moss Baccarat.
Yeah,
It's funnier if he's Burt Baccarat. Yeah, so that gun is throughout the season from Cyril to Cassian to Melshi. So I like, details like that.
Where did Melshi get it though?
Cassian gives it to them when they go back to Niamos, and they decide to split up. And they says like, people need to know what happened on Narkina 5. He gives Melshi the gun.
I didn't. So that's the other thing. I never realized who Melshi was. Like, where did he come from?
He was in Narkina 5 with Cassian putting together the Death Star parts, and they escaped together.
I didn't realize that was him. Okay.
In Rogue One, he's the guy leading the ground.
Yeah, he leads the whole ground assault.
Yeah.
I like the way they gave him. It's like they gave credence, and they made you care about like day players almost, right?
Yeah,
like,
for sure.
I thought it was such an interesting way to use the series to kind of like get like just bridge the gap and give you so much more of a reason. Ehrlich, Backman, or Rat. I just thought it was a very cool way to like let you have context and show like just how much more was at stake with these. Like, the same thing with like Cassian watering his plants like before he's going off to his inevitable doom.
Right, because that's what Marva did when they were on Ferrix. She would always take care of the plants. I like the small things like that I missed in the first viewing, partially because of the phone thing. But when I paid attention, just seeing all that, that's really one of the reasons I really love this series. Another one is the set design, which I thought was incredible. The way they built these different planets, and they gave them all their distinct, the Gorman language, the way the Aldani, the Donnies were kind of like a tribal nomadic people. It just seemed really in depth compared to, if we look at the original trilogy, we have like desert planet, snow planet, so jungle planet. But I like how they gave each of these planets made them more distinct, and gave them all their own culture. Now, if you can live in any location from Andor season 2, where would you live and why, Paul?
Well, I would live on Coruscant. I've heard the food is really good. It's the place where whatever their version of Metallica would most likely play. They're not going to go to the far off planet. Although I think I over romanticize France and Paris in particular. So I definitely like the French planet had me going like, ooh, because the food there would be super good too.
Amazing.
Well, until of course the Empire destroys it all. But yeah, so Coruscant is, I'm a city kind of guy. So
fair. Mac.
I would go to Mon Mothma's homeworld.
Chandrila.
Yeah, it seems like they got really good music, and
architecture's gorgeous. It's very posh.
I think I could get by there just fine. It'd feel like just being in like a nice vacation the whole time.
Does it remind you of any real life city? Like if Gorman is space planet France, what would Chandrila be?
Like Spain, maybe?
Yeah. I'm going to give a weird answer and go with Yavin. I like tropical climates. If it rains, I want like that kind of rain.
Right.
I love the little, hut that Bix and Cassian were living in, that they carved out from somewhere. And and originally Yavin was based on Vietnam, the way George Lucas envisioned it. So that's the kind of climate, and irrationally, that's the kind of food I'm expecting there. I love Thai food, Vietnamese food. So I expect that's what they have on Yavin, or at least the ingredients to make that. Carlos says, one of the things I liked about Gorman's humans is that they spoke a different language that wasn't basic. Yes. Yeah.
I thought it was interesting that they were French and the French resistance, and like just like a lot of interesting plays there. Yeah,
like that scene in Casablanca where they have the dueling. It also reminded me of this bit Robert Wall used to do, making fun of New Jersey, that they were considering making Born to Run the state anthem. And you know, the line in Born to Run where, you know, where he says suicide machines. Robert Will's like, you find very few anthems with the word suicide in it. And then he's like, dun, da, 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 suicide. It's like, nah. But yes, Space Planet France would be, I think the food there would be amazing. Now, are you guys familiar with Benjamin Bratt's work? Because I was not.
Yeah.
I don't know much about, I mean, he's a very accomplished actor, but I just haven't watched him or remembered him for a lot of things. Paul, what did you think of recasting Bail Organa with Benjamin Bratt? And what did you think of his cursing scene in the Senate? Because I can't think of another Star Wars cursing scene off the top of my head, so it's very unusual.
No. Okay. I think if there's anybody who could step into that role, he was the best choice. I can't think of any other actor that could have that was as Jimmy Smithian as he was. But that said, I thought the replacement was kind of pointless. I think you could have very easily created a new character and not, you know, I get that you can't get Jimmy Smith. Okay. So let's create a new character and have him play the similar role. Because there was nothing that character did that couldn't have been done by somebody else. You know.
See, I disagree with that, because he is obviously he was an important member of Senate. He was also in Rogue One and part of the
I get that, but the interesting, one of the things that it's not canon is there's a deleted scene from Revenge of the Sith where Mon Mothma is meeting with a bunch of other people from the Senate, and it's basically the beginnings of the rebellion. And in fact, it's the first time that the woman who plays Mon Mothma for the last couple of years played her, even though and then it ended up getting cut. So there clearly were other people in the Senate who were unhappy with this and would have been part of the rebellion. I kind of wanted, you know, if you can't get Jimmy Smith, I would have preferred they get somebody different. You know,
that's like, I don't think you should be afraid to recast. They got skittish, obviously, after the negative reactions that Solo got, and they kind of swore off recasting for that. But I like that they did it, because some of the stories they want to tell in the future, especially with Ahsoka in that time period, she should be meeting characters from the original trilogy.
This is one thing I will say. If he permanently takes over,
and shows
then I think I will come to appreciate it more. But if the next time we see Bail Organa, it's Jimmy Smith again because now he's available,
it's going
to seem weird to me. You know what I mean? Like if Jimmy Smith was like, "Look, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm getting too old." Blah 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 blah.
So in the narrative, though, does Bail, like, I don't remember, but you know, we see Bail Organa, he's still on Yavin. Right? Does he take a trip back home to Alderaan before they blow up Alderaan, or is he blown up on Alderaan?
He dies on Alderaan. Yeah. Okay. There's Senate is still a thing, and he's still a member of Senate, even though he's sneaking around with these dirty rebels on Space Planet Vietnam. Carlos adds, I thought Benjamin Bratt made Organa look more sus, especially towards the end. Yeah, I mean, there was
Carlos, I'm 57. I don't know what the fuck sus means.
He was a bit shady.
Speak old English, please.
What did you think of Benjamin Bratt, Mac? And did you know him from before?
Liked him. I thought he brought a level of, you know, I thought one of the most interesting things about the show was the way they showed just how disorganized the rebellion was early on.
Yeah.
And then, like, you know, Mon Mothma kind of held a position of power and leadership in there. And it just seemed like Benjamin Bratt's character, like, he did great as Bail Organa and kind of being another figure of leadership that kind of helps get it all going and being, you know, together as the rebellion. So I thought he did well. I agree with Paul. Like, I feel like I don't know who else they could have cast to do that. But I think he did great. I was, I also agree if we lose him, and like I see the character as he better be recurring as Bail Organa in the future, because if he doesn't, that's going to be stupid, right? Like that was
Right.
my initial like response to seeing him in this role. I thought I tell my kids, if you're going to curse, you better make it worthy. Like, like if you're going to drop whatever, make it worth it. And so I felt like, given that context, I think he did a great job cursing.
I liked his performance. He got more to work with than Jimmy Smits did, because there was more of a focus, obviously, on this particular Senate. The cursing, I don't know, it made me laugh because I wasn't expecting it.
Because you're not expecting it. Yeah. It didn't fit. It didn't fit.
It's also not, I don't know if that's the line I would have used. Like, it makes sense, and I get it. They wanted to be emphatic about it, but in my head, I wanted something more juvenile and be like, fuck this senator. I don't know, something. So, Paul, what would you have said if that was your line to choose? You get your one F-bomb or your one curse.
Probably something about motherfucking Ewoks on this motherfucking spaceship.
Mac, how would you close that out? I mean, you're good at cursing, Mac.
I'm really just there's nothing that beats a really good, well-timed F-bomb, right? So just seeing his front, like, a moment of frustration and him just doing a like, just given how like things were getting a little weird at, when things were not going the way the rebellion should be going.
Fair enough. Now, guys, I want to do a little quick promo break. If you want to help out RPadTV, please consider liking, giving a thumbs up. You can also pick up a Proton VPN subscription. This link is in the YouTube and Facebook subscriptions. Proton VPN is a great way to browse the internet while keeping your data safe, keeping your identity safe. And it's also a great way to spoof streaming services to access additional content. You can get up to 64% off a Proton VPN subscription by using this link here. And again, there's a direct link in the Facebook and YouTube subscriptions. Now back to us, because we know that's why you're here. I want to talk about the sexual assault scene on Space Planet Nebraska. This seemed to divide the Star Wars community. Some people felt like this was out of place and inappropriate for Star Wars, which I don't know. I found that sentiment weird. I'm like, they fucking blew up a planet in the first one, but you have a problem with sexual assault. Mac, what did you think of that scene, and did it feel out of place to you?
To me, no, it didn't feel out of place. I can at least take the vantage point and see why a parent or somebody watching with their kids might not have thought that's something that they would see in a Star Wars show, right? Like if you were watching with like a young kid or something like that, I could see that would be like, I'll have to talk to Billy about that later, so I could see like somebody being upset by it, but like for me, I didn't, I thought it did such a good job of icing the cake for how much and why you should continue to hate stormtroopers and the Imperials, right?
Yeah.
Like they just act like they don't give a shit. The rules don't apply to them. Like, so and it runs parallel with a lot of things in the world today that I think a lot of us think the same about. So, but yeah, I didn't have a problem with it at all. I thought, she did a great job. Like they both actors did a great job in that scene when he falls down and hits his head on the thing.
Yeah,
I just made your face when I watched. I was like, oh god, he's gone.
That was gnarly. Yeah.
But yeah, so that's my answer. I thought it was fine. I thought it fit the show for the story that they were trying to tell. How what more do you need to show or do to get you to hate somebody?
Paul, do you have a take on that scene?
It's kind of the same. I thought it fit really well. I thought it served a good purpose. I thought it was done well. This isn't a kids show, although we know kids are going to watch it because it's Star Wars. I had more of a problem with the whole thing about her becoming a drug addict for a while, like
Right.
that seemed more out of character and awkward. And let's not forget, this is also a show in a universe where they've talked about slaves,
Genocide.
Yeah. Genocide. Well, but also, I mean, don't forget, what's his name? Jabba had, well, I don't know if she was a sex slave, but they've sort of implied that she was. It's not out of the realm of possibility. I mean, I've always thought it weird that there are people who think, no, you shouldn't use rape as a shorthand for showing that somebody is a jerk. And I'm like, why?
Right.
I've never kind of understood the thinking that like, oh, you shouldn't ever do that. It's like, why not? If it works, it works. Like, it's one thing if it's gratuitous, fine. But if it's not gratuitous, and it certainly wasn't gratuitous in this,
I agree. I agree with both of you. I thought it was showing the power dynamic and the abuse of power that the Empire was guilty of. So I don't get why some people had a problem with it.
Because the internet exists.
Yeah. I think it might have been worse if he had actually gotten to do it, though.
Right. Yeah, I can't see.
I don't know if that would have been necessary. If she had actually been raped by him and they had shown it, certainly if they'd shown it in a graphic way, I think that would have been weird. But like,
and then ended with her holding a baby in the field at the end. You're like,
yeah. Well, then that would right. But I think the fact that he was unsuccessful and that she ended up, doing what she did to him. Yeah, like I think that's part of the reason why it worked. I think if he had actually raped her, that would have been worse. Or if it had gone much further.
The whole drug thing didn't fit. And I honestly, at some point, I thought they were setting that up so that Luthen was going to essentially make her overdose and kill her off as like a risk to get Cassian to focus.
I totally get the drug thing, though, because she was tortured in season 1 and she's still haunted by those dreams.
Yeah.
And by her torturer. So she's using drugs to not dream. So it's a lot of people use drugs as an escape, but I also just like how it makes her ending sweeter after being tortured, after being sexually assaulted on a shitty farm planet. I don't like farms.
Sorry. I thought she was a very cool character, and I was like very happy to know that as much as we know, she and now Cassian's son survived. And they like Cassian, him and Bix's whole thing was like, we just want to win.
Right.
Like, whatever the cost, we got to win.
Dating tangent here. We were talking about Benjamin Bratt before, but as I was reading about him, I learned that he'd married Talisa Soto, who was famous for being a Bond girl, but also for playing Katana in that old Mortal Kombat movie. So
it's a great movie, by the way.
Respect to him. That's quite an accomplishment. And I learned that Adria Arjona, who plays Bix Kayleen, is dating Aquaman now. So, I mean, good for them. I guess they're both really beautiful people.
Jason Momoa?
Yes.
Ah, okay.
Yes. I usually call him Aquaman or Khal Drogo, whichever, depending on the mood. So I'm actually going to change the order of the questions here since it seemed like a more natural fit. But some viewers felt that Tony Gilroy's writing mirrors some of the things that are happening in America today, especially with our government, and kind of the email situation at the end of Andor season 2. I'm like, wow, you guys, Pete Hesketh was with you guys and sending like wrong files to people. Did the season 2 ever make you feel uncomfortable because it was too close to what was happening in America today, or did you separate that? And then keep this in mind that Tony Gilroy is a big history nerd, and he studies all kinds of revolutions, and he put a ton of it into Andor season 2, but also wanted to provide some commentary on today. Mac, go for it.
I didn't feel bothered by it. Again, it's not something that was like a trigger or anything like that for me. but I definitely felt it from the first minute you start. They set the show up, right? Like it's definitely paralleling current times, and I think in a good way, in the sense of not shying away and telling the news that you're being told to tell, but just showing like this is the world that we're all kind of living in,
Right.
to some degree.
No, totally.
So, but it didn't seem like jarring to me or anything like that. It made sense. It's like, hey, like what better time than now to have this show kind of give that feel.
Paul, do you think it was tastefully and well executed?
Yeah, I do, because there were a couple times when somebody would say something and I would be like, "Oh, okay." But it was everything that's in the show made sense for, like, there was nothing that was really obviously a reference to what's going. There was nothing that was overt. Like it wasn't like the head of the ISB had like a bad spray tan and like really weird hair, and like
Clay didn't blow up 5 randomly orange, stormtrooper transports.
Like there was no, like if our world wasn't the way it is now, you could do this show just the way it is and you wouldn't change anything. In part because what we're going through now is, has happened, as they say in Battlestar Galactica, it has happened before and it will happen again. I'm kind of reminded of what Margaret Atwood has said about the oh God, what's the Handmaid's Tale?
Okay.
How she said that everything in the book has actually happened in some form or another somewhere else. But like when you read that book, it all fits what's going on. And I felt that same way here, where like everything that happened, everything that was said fit the world and would have been fitting whether what we're going through is was happening or not.
Yeah, I think it was mostly tastefully done. I don't think it was too heavy-handed, but I am a center-left progressive kind of dude, so I'd be curious to hear what more conservative people thought, if they hated like how the boys got backlash, which still seems bizarre to me. Like, oh, now you're offended after 4 seasons.
That was way more overt, but like, but at the same time, like I also don't understand. Like you said, like I don't understand how they didn't get that. Like I got that watching like the first first episode. I was like, oh, okay, he's like MAGA. Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Like there was nothing subtle about that whatsoever.
Not hidden.
There are 2 moments that made it hit close to home for me. One was during Mon Mothma's speech, where she talked about distorting the truth. I'm like, there's a lot of that happening right now. And the third was more in a comical way. And in the last episode that I was referring to later, how Dedra figured out the Death Star because someone emailed her files she wasn't supposed to receive. So that's how she pieced everything together. And it made me think about Signal and that whole situation with Pete Hesgeth. I'm like, wow, it really does happen. So, I don't know. I thought that was amusing.
So Dedra, she got sent to jail because they thought she was part of the rebels that had kind of infiltrated the ISB because of the one guy.
I don't think they actually thought that, but they needed someone to blame, and they had to dispose of the bodies for this massive fuck up. So,
and then there was the other guy who killed the ISB.
Partagaz
killed himself just to not have to suffer the fate or shame of a failed operation.
He's old and he can't go around building Death Star parts at his age. But I loved his death, by the way, because he's right before he kills himself, he's listening to Nemec's manifesto.
Yeah.
And if you remember how he describes the ISB, saying like, we are healthcare providers and we have to eradicate these diseases before they take over. And when he's listening to Nemec's manifesto, he comes to the realization, like, I can't beat this disease. Like my whole way of thinking is screwed.
I don't know where my head was at, but when I jumped into that scene, I initially interpreted that as has he been like a rebel spy this whole time? And did he somehow flip and give information? And is he killing himself to take himself out of the equation because now he's burned as well? Like, my initial that's how I was like processing him. Like, that's why he killed himself. And then apparently that wasn't it.
I saw it as like his whole belief system was just shattered. Like the whole way he viewed the ISB was just shattered by this manifesto that's spreading around the world, and he can't beat this disease. And he's also old and doesn't want to make Death Star parts.
One of the things I loved, it was a very little thing, but the guy who basically was like, I'm supposed to take you away. I forget his name. I love that he steps outside and he keeps his back to the door, and there's the two stormtroopers in front of him.
Oh yeah, they twitch.
And then you hear the muffled shot, and the stormtroopers start to move, and he's like,
yeah, I thought that was very cool.
He's like, there's gonna be a mess in there. You're gonna want to get a towel.
He gave him respect. I also kept seeing Partagaz as he's the maester in Game of Thrones, so I kept waiting for him to yell at Samwell Tarly. But also Legret, the guy who holds the stormtroopers back. Like in my head, like I wanted him to have a neck tattoo that said "No Legrets," like from
No Regrets.
Yeah, it's so stupid, but I kept seeing that in my head.
That's funny.
So Tony Gilroy, he condensed this into season 2 instead of 3 more seasons, because he said he's been working on this for 10 years and he wants to make the Great Wall 2 or whatever Bourne movie he wants to do again. But I get that he's burnt out on Star Wars. Do you think he'll be back? If so, what would you like him to work on, Paul?
I don't think he'll be back. I think they'll try to get him back, but I don't think he'll do it. If he did it, it'll be like a while from now. And I think the thing is, he would have to choose the right project, because like I don't think his pacing works for, say, a movie. Not today. In the 70s, maybe. Not today. And
well, I mean, he did a zippy job with Rogue One, although he
didn't direct Rogue One.
Right, but he added some of the most important parts of it, which
but he didn't.
Was weird.
Right, but it was the direction that that movie zipped along, and this is the other thing, is if he came back, people would be like, okay, we want you to do it like Andor, and that doesn't really work for, say, like The Mandalorian, or Ahsoka, or something else. So I just
man, I wish they brought that back.
Same.
Yeah, I don't know what he could do, but like I think the decision to him not to do this for 5 seasons was a good one, because that would have been too much. So
I agree with that. And I also agree that I don't think he'll be back, and they will try to give him a lot of money to come back, but I don't think he will. But I still think you need that type, because he is not a hardcore Star Wars nerd. Some of the stuff he had to research and look up. So he's kind of like Dave Filoni is the big Star Wars creative now. I forget what his fancy title is now, but he is total Star Wars nerd. He is a disciple of George Lucas. But I think you need an opposite, like a Tony Gilroy, that brings a different style to it. Because as much as I love Dave Filoni stuff, especially Rebels, you need the balance. Mac, what do you? Oh, go ahead, Paul.
Well, wait. What I could maybe see is he comes up with an idea, and then he gives it to them, and he says, "I have this idea. I don't have time to write all the scripts. I don't have time to do everything, but I can give you an outline and give you kind of a thing,
collaborate
and collaborate with you guys. But I'm busy doing. I mean, I hope not the Great Wall 2, because that movie was terrible. But like." Something like, do you know what I mean? I don't see him doing full on thing, but I could understand. I could see that if he 10 years from now goes, I have an idea. Hear me out. Boom, 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 boom. Here's I'll write the outline. And I can see him picking the person to do it.
Yeah. Like I'm still one of the few people that like the Solo movie, but I know
I like it.
A lot of people
I like
don't.
the Solo movie too.
I'd like to see somebody, if Disney's gonna just pretend that's not real and doesn't exist anymore. I'd love to see somebody take another stab at, again, and doesn't have to be the same way that Andor was done, but I just think like he got that, just the general look and feel of what the universe would be like for somebody like a scoundrel, right? Like somebody like Cassian Andor, somebody like Han Solo, even. So I'd love to see like a solo series done by him.
Well, aren't they? I thought they're doing oh God, what's the character's name?
Jar Jar Binks.
No, Billy D. Williams' character.
Lando.
Yeah, they're doing a Lando. Like they've been talking about, they were going to do a Lando. Yeah, well, Donald Glover was going to do. They were going to do a movie, and
They
now
cannot have Donald Glover as Lando now.
Well, that's the thing. But Donald Glover's like involved in it, and it's going to be like a TV show.
Okay.
Where he makes out with robots.
Oh, Lando.
So a few Tony Gilroy stories. The way they originally envisioned the Andor series is that they wanted to do like a Western style adventure where a Cassian and K2 go around like solving problems and fighting people. And
yeah,
Tony Gilroy thought that was stupid.
There's the year in between where he rescues K, or where he captures K, and then where the last 3 episodes take off. So
right.
I want to see what happened in that year.
And I was watching his interview on Seth Meyers where he talks about having a family dinner, and people were a little tipsy at his end of the table. His son was arguing with his niece's husband, and then he's like, "I'm going to use you two idiots." And those were the ones he had on the opposing rebel side in the first 2 episodes on Yavin. They were the 2 rebel idiots. So I like that he kept it in his family. His brother also was one of the writers on the series, and another one of his brothers was also in production. So it was a family affair. Now, guys, I want to talk about some of the endings, some of the fates of the characters. Let's start with the baddies. Paul, who had your favorite ending out of the villains, whether it was a painful ending, a funny ending, or your choice?
Well, the best ending was the guy that K2 just knocked the hell out of, off the cliff or off the ledge rather. Which is kind of funny because one of the things that you notice in Star Wars is there's a lot of places where there's not a lot of railings.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm always reminded there's a funny thing in the Family Guy Star Wars thing where the 2 guys that operate the Death Star, like you're actually the ones who pull the
you
lever.
Don't do the budget, Steve, or whatever.
Yeah. Well, yeah, they're like standing there and they're like, all I said is I don't care about time, time off or overtime. I just want a railing. I just want a railing here. And they said we'd be leaning against it. So that guy is the funniest, but the one that meant the most to me was the rapist. When he got his comeuppance, I was just like, good. I'm glad you're dead. You don't deserve to live. And it always reminds me of when I watch SVU, and they have a particularly fucked up bad guy, especially if it's like a men's rights guy or an incel or whatever, and that guy gets killed. Like you're always kind of like I don't like. Yeah, I mean, I don't in real life. I do not like it when people celebrate the death of others, no matter who it is. But when you're watching fiction and somebody that's really a real scumbag gets it, like you're always kind of like,
good. Yep.
How about you
hope
Mac?
that sends a message.
I said earlier, I think the little officer that K2 ragdolls around uses as a human meat puppet.
Yes.
I thought that was the best. I thought that was fantastic.
Because that guy was he was Dedra's underling initially, and then he got promoted, but he was always kind of a weasel.
Dedra's ending would have been funnier if they actually showed her getting electrocuted.
What do you think? I thought that ending was awesome. Do you think she lives out her sentence, or does she kill herself in Narkina, whatever number?
I don't know. I thought her ending was interesting. It certainly makes you wonder. And I told you this the other day. Like I thought Cyril's death was just worthless to me. Like I thought they could have done more with that character. I I thought that it was interesting. They just threw him away and had him get, clacked in the head by the leader of the French resistance.
See, I liked his ending because he was such a fanatic until his last day of life.
They spent so much time on him and his mom and the whole thing just to shoot him in the head at the end and not close out any of the why for that.
But who shoots him, I think, was also pretty significant. I thought that was a good choice. The ending and you can say whether he's a bad guy or not, but Perrin's ending made me laugh. Mon Mothma's husband.
Oh yeah,
he was showing with
the drunk new wife, and
that's Skulden's wife. So that's his son-in-law's mom that he's having an affair with. So but he looks miserable though, even though he has this presumably fine wine and pretty woman that he's having an affair with. But
he was an interesting character to pair with Mon Mothma.
Oh, for sure.
Well, but they said it was like a forced arranged marriage kind of thing.
Yeah. But it was I don't know who looked at those two and were like, yeah, they would get along.
They'll hit it off. Yeah.
Yeah. It had to be one of those things where it was we don't care whether they get along or hit it off. It's they more of a Game of Thrones kind of,
just to give a broader perspective view of the life Mon Mothma threw away.
Right. I mean, arranged marriages aren't about getting along.
And her husband, they didn't get along, and her kid hated her very existence, and they didn't get along. So it was
I wondered what happened to her.
The daughter?
Yeah. Whether she faced any kind of punishment for her mom's actions. And apparently her husband is a wuss, and she would be the controlling one. So
yeah.
How about the good guys, Paul? Who had your favorite ending out of them?
Bix.
Yeah.
She looked so happy and content.
Yeah.
And she felt safe when she was standing there in the field holding that little baby.
I gave you hope.
That was that may be the happiest ending that anybody in the entire series ever got.
And it's such a great contrast to the way Cassian dies when the rubble of Scarif is coming. So it's like a sunset.
Nuclear blast. And
she's looking at a hopeful sunrise. So I love the contrast in that.
Yeah, sunrises come up a lot in Star Wars. But yeah, I do wonder, though, if she went home that night and called Momoa and was like, how do you feel about kids?
Interesting. Mac, your favorite ending for the heroes?
I still like the way the other guy uses a meat shield. That was probably my favorite ending for a recurring character. We all know what happens to Cassian. I just feel again, for the characters that we know live, that show gave me such a better viewpoint into appreciating the fact that Mon Mothma lives, right? Or whoever else, Bix survives, or Will survives, right? Anybody that was there from kind of the beginning. So I like that, and then it just like I said, it gave you a layer of context that you didn't know you needed. So I think I'm trying to think who else was. You know what? There's actually one thing I didn't understand. If you watch Rogue One, K2 is not bulletproof.
Blaster proof.
That's how he gets his end.
He took a few. It took a few to bring him down at the end.
In Andor, I mean, they're tough as nails. Blaster shots just bounce right off. Multiple blaster shots just bounce right off of him. So I thought that was either a continuity thing or just it's got to be some reason why he was so tough.
Maybe his armor gets weakened.
Yeah.
There is time. Yeah. I was happy for B2 Emo's wedding ending, where he has his little robot friend and they're playing tag.
The little robot our friend looked like the robot from what's the game? The game that has a movie about it now. It shouldn't have. Oh God.
There are a lot of those.
A game that has
It
a
looks like-
movie about it.
No, it was like a recent video game movie that shouldn't have been made.
Minecraft is the most recent
No,
video
no,
movie I'm thinking of.
Uncharted.
I like the
Ooh.
Uncharted movie.
But I was afraid that B2 was going to be waiting for Cassian forever in the wheat fields.
Right.
So
Oh,
I was happy he found a friend and they were playing tag together.
You know, another really interesting thing I found about Andor was the show's use of music and horns specifically to really make you feel like the Rebel Alliance, if you will. Right? Just what like the use of horns was really well done in like throughout the entire show.
For sure. Mac, I'll let you take this one first. If you could enjoy one character's story arc from Andor season 2, who would you choose and why?
I would just go with Cassian. I said this earlier. I think he's one of the coolest. Like he's taken over, like almost number 1 spot or number 2 spot behind Han Solo to me, for like one of the coolest characters from a show or movie or series that I've really liked. I thought, and that you kind of know, just like if I had picked Han Solo, that you know that Chewbacca would be, you know, a tag along and whatever those were. So if I pick Cassian, I know I'm also getting some K2.
Paul, whose journey would you go on?
geez, I don't think I want to go on anybody's. Like everybody had a bad time. You know, you end up dead. You end up
I go huff
addicted to
gas with,
drugs. You almost get
Roman.
raped. You get smacked by a robot and fall off a ledge. Used as a meat shield.
See, I'm going with Willman because he got a girl on Space Planet Nebraska. He got another girl on Space Planet France. He did space drugs with Saw Gerrera. Like,
I mean,
had quite a journey.
if you're gonna go that way, then I would say Bon Mothma's husband, because like, you know, he was just living the life of Riley and got himself like a young
He's made of
chickie.
Chandelian cocaine, like
You know, and yeah, I mean, exactly. You know, he's kind of like that
Well,
dude from the Die Hard movie that like
he's
gets
living
busted.
dangerously though, because his Skolden is not a good dude. He is into some shady activities. So maybe that's not the wife he should be sleeping with.
yeah. he's
Well,
probably-
yeah. I mean, I wouldn't have cheated. I have a personal policy that I won't screw another man's wife, but you know,
It's not like his wife is coming back though.
yeah, you know, and again, an arranged marriage, and you know, in some cultures, even though you have an arranged marriage, you're allowed to screw other people as long as you're discreet about it. But like, I mean, you know, again, he's living on Coruscant where the food is good. You know, monthly Metallica shows.
He's got a driver. He's fine.
He's got a driver. You know, he's got the money. He's got all her money now. Like,
That's true.
you know, I mean, the only thing he has to worry about is whether someone's going to be like, "Hey, aren't you Mon Mothma's husband?" And he's, you know, and all he's going to be like, "Not anymore. Screw
He's like,
her."
it was
he ran off
arranged.
to
I
join
never
the
loved her.
Yeah, yeah.
He's like,
You know,
"Ah."
he'll go on Coruscant Fox News and you know, just be like, hey, I had no idea.
So many fans feel that Andor is the best live action series that Disney has released since it took over from Lucasfilm. It is currently ranked that way on Rotten Tomatoes. The top 2 slots are Andor Season 2 and Andor Season 1. And the next one is the Mandalorian Season 1. So, Paul, answer. So I know you disagree with this, Paul, but what do you think is better in terms of live action Star Wars series?
Mandalorian, Ahsoka, and Obi-Wan.
Oh,
So all of them.
not Book of
And-
Boba Fett. He's
Well,
saying.
no, and here's the thing. I like the Book
Skeleton
of Boba Fett,
Crew.
but the first half is not as good as the second half. And
Sure.
I'm also holding off. I don't think Skeleton Crew is better, but I need to watch it, and I need to also watch The Acolyte again, because those two I
I'll watch
haven't
the
watched
Acolyte
the second
again
time.
anytime, but I'm never gonna watch Skeleton Crew again.
Same.
Oh, I'll watch Skeleton Crew again. Yeah.
Yeah, I have zero interest in watching that.
I
What
would
I will say
disagree.
though, what I will say is I think this is the best written, directed, and acted of the Star Wars show. I just didn't like it all that. It wasn't as enjoyable as me. It didn't have the energy, and it's funny because like I saw Stellan Skarsgård was on Colbert last week, and Colbert said something like it's so good, it doesn't even feel like a Star Wars show, and I was like, yeah, I think that's why I don't like it as
Right.
much.
So you wanted more of the space wizards and laser swords that are
Yeah,
traditional.
and the thing is, like, Star Wars has been many things,
Yeah.
and it's always Star Wars. No
Yeah.
matter what it is, like even the worst games still feel like Star Wars, and this, I don't know,
Right.
it didn't. Yeah, I don't know. It wasn't as enjoyable.
As much as
There's no presence of the Force.
yeah,
Or
very
very
It
little.
wasn't, but it wasn't
the-
even,
except for the back row
like I
lady.
don't mind that. It was sort of, it was the energy and the pacing, and like we keep talking about K2SO as being like a highlight of the show, and it's like, yeah, when he came in, the energy changed. The
Yeah.
energy of the show changed, and in part and also because those episodes are a little more actiony, but like it just changed the tenor of the show and made it much more enjoyable. Like all the other shows, I kept in the middle, I would pause and be like, oh, there's still half an hour. Like, okay. And I didn't do that like with the last two. And I never do that with The Mandalorian or.
See, I'm a massive Ahsoka fan, and
Mhm.
this show to me it's just on a whole nother level. Some of
I would
the
like Ahsoka to be more like Andor.
I agree with that. I'm also a big Acolyte fan, but
Same.
just comparing the sets, the sets on the Acolyte almost looked like high school productions
Yeah.
at times, and when you compare it to what Tony Gilroy had to spend here, just on Gorman alone, that was impressive.
So I always need to have something to look forward to, right?
Yes.
Like shows and TV and movie wise. So like in the world of Star Wars, now that I'm not gonna get any more Andor, what is next that's worthy that's coming? Like how long do I?
Well, they're
Star Wars stuff?
they're cutting back on TV, so the only thing confirmed right now for live action is Ahsoka 2, which they have to do because it ties into the Filoni movie.
Right.
Yeah, and
we're gonna get an Ahsoka season 2.
they're filming now, actually.
Yeah, and
like literally now. You have that thing with what's the handsome pretty boy?
Oh, Ryan Gosling.
Yes, they has his thing. You have an animated Darth Maul series coming back.
Okay.
With Sam Witwer, who is awesome. But Mac, do you think this is the best live action series?
Oh yeah, this has given me an entirely reinvigorated desire for Star Wars. I thought it was great, well acted, well written. It gave me I could see the no wizards, no lightsabers, like no force. It still gave me enough Star Wars and enough good Star Wars to like fill that void. And I'm bummed we're not going to get more.
Yeah, like I also have it as the best live action Star Wars so far, certainly in the Disney era. And yeah, it doesn't have the traditional things that we loved as Star Wars, especially when we were kids. But I think it complements it more because you have Filoni for all that stuff, who sometimes Filoni is guilty of going back to the well and, just updating the stuff Lucas did because he is a Lucas disciple. I like that we got a fresh, original, and different take on it. And just in terms of quality, the performances, the writing, and the set design, the world building, I don't see anything else comparing with it.
Mm-hmm.
Let's get out of here on this, probably the most important question. The booze du jour of this is called Revnog. Paul, what do you think Revnog tastes like?
An apple teeny crossed with eggnog.
Ooh.
Is this what they're drinking when they're playing cards?
Yes. And also throughout. They ordered it in the first episode. They ordered it at the bar there.
Strong flavored vodka.
I'm thinking more sake-ish because they're not doing shots. They're pouring full cups of it.
That's how you drink vodka.
In like 8 ounces at a time. So they're
with ice. Sure.
In my head, it's like a more sake-ish or maybe rum because that seems like an easy liquor to make.
Yeah, but then you get into like Captain Jack Sparrow territory.
Yeah, that is true. So that will be a wrap for our discussion on Andor Season 2. I'd love to hear what you guys thought of it. So please leave a comment or drop me a line on Blue Sky if you have any thoughts on Andor. Say hi to K2 over there. Check out paulsemel.com.
You can't
Check
give it a
out
picture, though.
turtlebeach.com and go to Matthew Freeman's Substack. Thanks for watching RPadTV. Mac and I will be back next week along with Carlos, where we're discussing the studio. And we actually added 2 episodes. So we're going to have 2 at the end of May, where we're going to talk about what games journalism is in 2025. And the 3 of us here will be coming back to talk about recasting Revenge of the Sith. Thanks for watching RPadTV. See you next time. Bye.